An Egyptian tomb once held a cheese. Think about that. A food born from warm animal milk, clay pots, smoke, stomachs, bacteria, and one 7,000-year accident became durable enough, valuable enough, and trusted enough to feed empires. In 2022, humanity produced about 22.6 million tons of cheese from whole cow milk alone. In 2024, Wisconsin made more than a quarter of all American cheese. That is not just milk. That is calories made solid, portable, tradable, and hard to waste. The story starts before factories, supermarkets, and stainless steel, with dangerous milk and people moving through a brutal world. Keep the tomb in mind. We will come back to it. Cheese is ordinary because it won. It sits quietly in a refrigerator drawer, wrapped in plastic, sliced into sandwiches, grated over pasta, melted onto bread, eaten without ceremony at midnight. But for most of human history, milk was a problem. It spoiled. It sloshed. It could make adults sick. It belonged to a living animal, and once it left that animal, the clock started. Cheese was one of the ways humans stopped the clock. It turned a fragile liquid into food that could cross a mountain pass, survive a winter, pay a tax, stock a ship, and carry the flavor of one valley into another century. Long before cheese had names, rinds, molds, caves, wheels, or shop counters, milk was both a gift and a trap. Around 10,000 years ago, communities in the Fertile Crescent were learning how to live with goats, sheep, and cattle instead of only hunting wild animals. That changed the math of survival. A goat could give meat once, but milk again and again. A cow could turn grass that humans could not digest into a white liquid full of fat, protein, and sugar. The problem was the sugar. Milk contains lactose, and most adults in early farming populations could not digest much of it. Fresh milk also spoiled quickly in heat. Leave it near a hearth or carry it under a summer sun, and the sweet smell could turn sour, sharp, and slightly rotten in hours. So the first people who milked animals were holding something precious that refused to behave. It was wet, heavy, perishable, and biologically alive. You could drink it if your body tolerated it. You could feed it to children. But if you were an adult herder trying to move with animals, or a farmer trying to store food past the day it was drawn, fresh milk was not yet civilization's answer. It was civilization's challenge. The breakthrough came when people noticed that milk did not only spoil. Under the right conditions, it changed. Imagine milk carried in a pouch made from an animal's stomach, because that was one of the practical containers a herding world had. It is warm. It rocks against a body all day. It smells grassy at first, then sour, then strangely rich. When the pouch is opened, the milk is no longer milk. It has separated into pale greenish whey and soft white curds. To a modern eye, it might look spoiled. To a hungry person, it was worth investigating. The curd would have been springy and wet, with a tart smell like yogurt and a clean, fatty taste underneath. Not sweet like fresh milk, not rotten like waste, something in between. The magic was not magic. Animal stomachs contain rennet, a set of enzymes that helps young mammals digest milk. Rennet makes milk proteins gather into a gel. Acid from bacteria helps the process along. Salt, draining, pressing, and time can then turn that fragile gel into food. Nobody needed a laboratory to understand the first lesson. The watery part ran away. The nourishing part stayed in the hand. A liquid that spoiled became a lump that could be carried. A problem became a tool. The first cheese was probably not one invention by one genius. It was a repeated noticing, in many places, that sour milk could be saved. For a long time, that origin story sounded plausible but slippery, the kind of ancient kitchen accident that leaves no witness. Then archaeology began finding the fingerprints. In northern Europe, perforated pottery from Kujawia, in modern Poland, carried lipid residues that matched dairy processing. The holes mattered. If you want cheese, you need to drain whey from curds. A pierced clay vessel works like a strainer. Nature reported in 2013 that those vessels pointed to cheesemaking in the 6th millennium BCE. On the Dalmatian coast of Croatia, stable carbon isotope analyses of pottery residues found evidence for cheese or fermented dairy by about 5200 BCE, around 7,200 years ago. That date matters because it shows cheese was not a late luxury after cities were already comfortable. It was part of the Neolithic survival package. People were farming, herding, making pots, living with risk, and figuring out how to stretch food through seasons. A pot with tiny holes may not look epic. It is not a sword, crown, or temple, but it solved a deeper problem than most royal objects ever did. It made milk portable. It made animal herding more valuable. It let adults who struggled with fresh lactose consume dairy in a transformed form, because fermentation and draining reduce lactose. In a clay strainer, you can see the beginning of a food system. Cheese gave early herders something grain could not give in the same way. Grain is powerful, but it needs fields, harvests, grinding stones, storage bins, and protection from moisture and pests. Cheese could walk on 4 legs until the last possible moment. A flock could graze hillsides too rocky for plows, and the milk could become a compact ration. Think about the size shift. A bucket of milk is mostly water. Drain it, press it, salt it, and the valuable part shrinks into a smaller package. That package can be wrapped, stacked, traded, hidden, or loaded onto a cart. A 100-pound cheese wheel is about the weight of a large dog, but it can feed many more meals than the same weight of fresh milk carried in sloshing vessels. This quietly changed landscapes. Marginal land became useful. Mountain valleys, windy islands, and upland pastures could support people not just by meat, but by recurring milk harvests. Seasonal movement of animals, called transhumance in later pastoral worlds, turned grass at one elevation into food stored at another. Cheese was not just a recipe, it was a bridge between terrain and table. Once humans learned that grass could become milk, and milk could become a durable solid, places that looked poor on a grain map became rich on a dairy map. By the time cities rose in Mesopotamia, dairy had moved from accident to administration. The earliest states were obsessed with counting. Grain, beer, wool, labor, animals, land, jars, baskets, and rations all had to be recorded. Milk products fit into that new world because they could be measured, stored, and assigned. In southern Mesopotamia, images from the 3rd millennium BCE showed dairy scenes, cattle, milking, vessels, and processing. These were not decorative guesses about rural life. They belonged to a world where temples and palaces managed food at scale. Cheese and butter could feed workers, support specialists, and convert livestock into taxable output. This is one reason ordinary foods built civilization more reliably than monuments did. A ziggurat rises because thousands of people eat. A city survives because someone solves breakfast, lunch, winter, and rationing. Cheese helped by being concentrated animal nutrition before refrigeration existed. It also carried status. Fresh milk, fermented milk, butter, and cheese were not identical foods. Each had a place. Some were everyday. Some moved through institutions. Some appeared in offerings. The important shift was this. Cheese had become legible to power. Once rulers could count it, store it, and distribute it, it entered the machinery of states. And when food enters the machinery of states, it starts changing who works, who pays, and who commands. Ancient Egypt gives the story one of its most haunting pieces of evidence: cheese, as an object that could outlast the person buried near it. In the tomb of Ptolemy's, a high official from the 13th century BCE, researchers identified a whitish solid as ancient cheese, made from a mixture that included cow milk and sheep or goat milk. The tomb had been lost and rediscovered, disturbed and studied, but the food trace remained. That is the strange power of cheese in archaeology. Liquids vanish, meals decay, smells disappear, but salts, proteins, fats, vessels, and residues sometimes stay. Egyptian cheese would not have tasted like a refrigerated block from a modern store. It was probably sharper, saltier, drier, and more direct. In a hot climate, preservation mattered. Salt pulled water out, drying hardened the curd. Fermentation added tang and protection. A bite might have crumbled before softening on the tongue, with a sour edge and a mineral finish. This was food engineered by climate. Egypt's river valley depended on cycles: flood, planting, harvest, storage. Cheese fit that logic. It was milk disciplined into time. In a culture that filled tombs with goods for eternity, The presence of cheese says something blunt and human. Even in a civilization of pyramids and gods, people still needed durable food. Cheese did not travel as one single tradition. It split, adapted, and changed with animals, climates, containers, and microbes. One of the most surprising modern discoveries comes from Shaohe Cemetery in Xinjiang, in western China. DNA analysis of Bronze Age dairy residues identified kefir cheese made from cow and goat milk about 3,500 years ago. That matters because kefir is not just curdled milk. It is a fermented food shaped by communities of bacteria and yeasts. In other words, Bronze Age people were not merely watching milk break, they were managing living cultures, even if they did not have our words for microbes. Xinjiang sat along routes where people, animals, textiles, technologies, and foods moved across dry basins and mountain corridors long before the famous Silk Road became a phrase. A fermented dairy food that could travel through hard country was not a minor convenience. It was survival technology. The curds would have been tart, slightly yeasty, and alive with a prickle on the tongue, very different from the dense cooked cheeses of later Europe. This discovery also widens the story. Cheese is not only European, it is pastoral, Eurasian, African, Mediterranean, mountain, desert, and steppe. Wherever milk met time, hunger, containers, and human attention, people found ways to make it last. In the Greek world, cheese moved from survival into story, sport, and identity. Homer's Odyssey gives one of literature's most memorable dairy scenes in the cave of the Cyclops Polyphemus, where sheep and goats are milked and cheeses sit in baskets. The scene is myth, not farm accounting, but it preserves something real. The Mediterranean understood cheese as the food of herds, islands, caves, and rough abundance. Greek athletes at Olympia were associated with simple training foods, and ancient writers connect cheese with strength, discipline, and rural life. On islands and hillsides where grain could be difficult, sheep and goats turned scrub into milk. That milk became curd, and curd became a food that could be salted in brine or dried for storage. The word history starts to thicken here too. The Greek word tyros meant cheese, and it survives in scientific language like tyrosine, first identified from cheese protein in the 19th century. Cheese was entering language as well as diet. It could be humble, but it could also signal place. A cheese from a certain island or pasture carried a taste of that landscape. Salt air, wild herbs, animal breed, and season. The modern idea of terroir, often used for wine, belongs just as naturally to cheese. Long before labels and trademarks, people knew that milk from one place did not taste exactly like milk from another. The Romans did what Rome often did. They standardized, scaled, and carried local practices across roads, camps, villas, and markets. Latin gave cheese one of its most important root words, caseus. From it come words like casein, the main protein in cheese, and queso in Spanish. But another Latin word, forma, meaning form or mold, helped create the family of words behind French fromage and Italian formaggio, because cheese was shaped in forms. The language remembers the technology. Roman writers described methods of curdling milk, draining curds, salting, smoking, and aging. Columella, writing in the 1st century CE, explained cheesemaking in practical terms, including the use of rennet from young animals. Roman soldiers needed portable food. Cities needed markets. Villas needed products to sell. Cheese worked in every direction. Soft, fresh cheeses could be eaten quickly near production. Harder cheeses could move farther. Smoked cheeses lasted longer. A road system built for armies and tax collection also moved food habits. When Roman power spread, it did not invent every cheese tradition it touched, but it connected them. A technique from one valley could meet a market from another province. A soldier could acquire a taste far from home. A merchant could turn a local curd into a regional commodity. In that sense, cheese was not just carried by empire. It learned to behave like empire, shaped, marked, moved, and sold. When Roman authority weakened in the West, cheese did not collapse with it. It retreated into places that could preserve routine: farms, villages, mountain dairies, and monasteries. Monasteries mattered because they had land, animals, cellars, literate record keepers, and a calendar. Cheesemaking rewards repetition. The same temperature, the same salting, the same turning, the same cave, the same patience. A monastery could do that for decades. Across medieval Europe, different landscapes pushed cheese in different directions. Wet regions favored certain molds. Alpine regions created large cooked wheels because summer milk from high pastures had to feed people through winter. Brine cheeses suited hotter zones where salt was essential. In England, places like cheddar became associated with cheeses matured in caves, and later with techniques of stacking and turning curds. In France and Italy, regional cheeses became tied to valleys, abbeys, and trade routes. A big wheel was a storage device as much as a delicacy. It was a pantry you could roll. It was also a financial object. Cheese could pay rent, fill tithe obligations, and stand in for value in a world where coins were not always abundant. The medieval cellar was not just a cool room. It was a bank of calories, waiting in the dark, developing flavor while kingdoms fought above it. Some cheeses became large because geography demanded it. In alpine regions, cows grazed high summer pastures far from dense settlements. Milk could not be hauled down every day without roads, engines, or refrigeration, so people transformed it on the mountain. They heated curds in copper cauldrons, pressed them into huge wheels, and aged them into dense cheeses that could survive the journey down. A wheel of alpine cheese was landscape compressed. Grass, flowers, altitude, animal muscle, human labor, salt, wood smoke, and time. The size made economic sense. One large wheel has less surface area compared with its interior than many small cheeses, so it loses moisture differently and ages well. It can be transported, taxed, divided, and sold. This helped connect remote valleys to cities. Urban eaters wanted durable, flavorful protein. Mountain producers wanted cash, salt, tools, and grain. A food decision made on a slope could create a road, a market day, a merchant class, and a legal fight over names. Parmigiano-style hard cheeses in northern Italy, Swiss alpine wheels, and French mountain cheeses all came from this deeper logic. When fresh milk cannot travel, make a product that can. Maps are often redrawn by armies, but they are also redrawn by what spoils before it gets to market. This is the part of the story most people never learn. Cheese fed people, preserved milk, supported villages, and gave flavor to hard lives. But the same demand for dairy also hardened systems of control. In medieval and early modern Europe, livestock, pasture rights, rents, and taxes could decide who survived a bad year. Landlords and institutions often claimed a share of animal products. Peasants might owe cheese, butter, or labor connected to herds. In colonized lands, European animals did not arrive as neutral food. Cattle, sheep, and goats came with fences, diseases, land claims, and new property laws. In the Americas, after 1492, European livestock multiplied across landscapes already inhabited and managed by indigenous peoples. Herding could damage crops, alter grasslands, and support colonial settlements that pushed people from land. Cheese was not the cause by itself. That would be too simple, but dairy was part of a larger colonial food system. Animals, land seizure, labor extraction, trade, and law moving together. Food can be comforting at the table and violent in the field. That is the double life of everyday things. A cheese wheel in a market may look peaceful. Behind it can be pasture, ownership, exclusion, and power. Once cheese became wealth, it could be hoarded, taxed, branded, counterfeited, and fought over. The ancient accident had entered the darker machinery of history. The age of ocean empires made durable food more valuable than ever. Ships needed supplies that could survive weeks or months in damp holds. Hard cheese joined salted meat, dried peas, ship biscuit, beer, wine, and later preserved foods as part of the maritime pantry. It was not glamorous. It could sweat, crack, mold, and grow fiercely sharp. But it delivered fat and protein in a compact form. European migration carried cheese traditions across the Atlantic. Dutch, English, French, Spanish, German, Swiss, Italian, and Scandinavian settlers brought animals, tools, microbes, and preferences. In North America, dairy adapted to new climates and markets. A household cheese might become a farm product. A farm product might become a regional trade. A regional trade might become a factory industry. The causal chain is easy to miss. A ship carries people, people carry animals, animals require land, land claims create settlements, settlements need markets, markets reward durable foods help more people move. Cheese was inside that loop. It did not command armies, but it made movement easier. It helped feed the very societies that expanded. If you're still here, subscribe to Tales of the Table. The foods that look smallest on the plate often leave the deepest tracks through history. For thousands of years, cheese depended on local knowledge and local risk. Milk quality changed by season. A maker's hands mattered. A seller's invisible life mattered. Then the 19th century began turning cheese into an industrial product. In the United States, the first successful cheese factory is widely associated with Jesse Williams in New York in 1851. The logic was simple and revolutionary. Pool milk from multiple farms, standardize production, and make cheese more consistent for larger markets. This changed trust. Instead of buying only from a known farm or village, customers could buy a product shaped by factory methods, railroads, packaging, and eventually brands. The railroad mattered almost as much as the vat. Cheese could move from rural milk regions to growing cities. Science also changed the craft. Pasteur's work on microbes in the 19th century helped people understand fermentation and spoilage. Starter cultures made outcomes more predictable. Refrigeration stretched distance. The old cheese world did not vanish, but it now had a competitor: uniformity. A factory cheddar could feed a city at scale. A traditional raw milk cheese could carry a place-specific flavor that standardization often flattened. The modern cheese aisle was born from that tension between safety, scale, price, and character. Every wrapped slice and every cave-aged wheel still sits somewhere on that line. The 20th century did something even stranger. It made cheese less like cheese and more like infrastructure. Processed cheese, developed from techniques that used heat and emulsifying salts to create a smooth, stable product, solved a problem manufacturers cared about deeply. Natural cheese can separate, age unpredictably, and behave differently from batch to batch. Processed cheese melted smoothly, sliced evenly, shipped well, and lasted longer. That made it perfect for armies, cafeterias, lunch counters, fast food, and the home refrigerator. During the World Wars, shelf-stable and transportable foods became strategic. Afterward, industrial food systems pushed convenience into daily life. Cheese became a square, a tube, a powder, a sauce, a snack coating, a burger layer, a pizza blanket. The transformation was enormous. Cheese was no longer only a preserved milk product. It became a texture technology. Melt, stretch, gloss, salt, creaminess, browning. Pizza helped carry mozzarella into global fame. Cheeseburgers made sliced cheese iconic. Macaroni and cheese turned powdered dairy flavor into childhood memory. The same food that once depended on caves and seasons could now appear under stadium lights, in school lunches, at drive-through windows, and in frozen meals. It had conquered, not by staying ancient, but by becoming adaptable. Today, cheese is both local craft and global tonnage. Phayostat reported about 22.6 million tons of cheese from whole cow milk in 2022, with the United States as the largest producer. In 2024, Wisconsin alone accounted for 25.2% of total U.S. cheese production. That is one state turning milk into an identity, an economy, and an export. The scale is hard to picture. 1 ton is 1,000 kilograms. 22.6 million tons is not a deli counter. It is mountains of solidified milk, made possible by feed crops, veterinary science, refrigerated trucks, stainless steel, starter cultures, packaging lines, and supermarket logistics. Yet the oldest logic remains visible. Milk still spoils, curds still form, salt still protects, time still changes flavor, microbes still do much of the work. Even the fanciest modern cheese is a collaboration between animal, plant, person, and invisible life. And the questions around cheese are still civilizational questions. How land is used, how animals are raised, how workers are paid, how food moves, how tradition is protected, how scale changes taste. The ancient accident did not end when industry began. It became a global system, and that system is still expanding. One pizza, sandwich, snack, and wheel at a time. The reason cheese still fascinates us is that it keeps visible what most modern food hides. You can look at a blue cheese and see a controlled invasion. You can cut a hard-aged wheel and see time made edible in crystals, cracks, and grain. You can smell washed rind cheese and understand why preservation was never clean or polite. It is funky, salty, buttery, grassy, mushroomy, nutty, barn-like, sharp, sweet, and sometimes almost alarming. That sensory range comes from a simple beginning: milk, microbes, enzymes, salt, pressure, and patience. Cheese is also one of the rare foods where decay and desire stand close together. Too little control, and milk rots. Just enough control, and it becomes something people will age for years, protect by law, ship across continents, and serve at celebrations. Its names hold old journeys. Caseus becomes queso, forma becomes fromage and formaggio, curd becomes craft. A food discovered before writing now carries protected designations, export rules, factory codes, family secrets, and regional pride. It built quietly because it did not need to announce itself. It only had to solve the same problem again and again: how to make abundance last long enough to matter. Zoom out, and cheese is not just food. It is a human answer to time. It began when milk changed faster than people wanted it to, and someone tasted the change instead of throwing it away. From Neolithic pottery on the Dalmatian coast and in Poland, to Bronze Age kefir cheese in Xinjiang, to Egyptian tombs, Roman roads, alpine pastures, medieval cellars, colonial farms, steam age factories, and refrigerated warehouses, the same pattern keeps returning. A fragile liquid becomes a durable solid. A local accident becomes a trade good. A taste becomes a landscape. It was there when herders learned to live from animals without slaughtering them. It was there when temples counted rations and cities needed workers fed. It was there when monks turned cellars into slow machines. It was there when mountain people compressed summer grass into winter survival. It was there when ships crossed oceans, when factories pooled milk, when processed slices melted into the 20th century, and when a single US state could make a quarter of a nation's cheese. And after all that, after 7,000 years of microbes, migrations, taxes, empires, hunger, invention, and trade, it is sitting in your kitchen right now. So the next time you cut a wedge, grate a hard rind, or peel apart a slice, ask the older question hiding inside it: who first looked at spoiled milk and saw a future? Subscribe to Tales of the Table for more hidden histories of the ordinary foods that built the world.